There is a boy in the first episode of Adventure Time who is 12 years old and certain about everything. He knows who the good guys are. He knows who the bad guys are. He knows that a sword can solve most problems and that friendship can solve the rest. He has a white hat that covers his hair and a dog that can stretch into any shape and a world that seems to exist for the sole purpose of giving him something to do. His name is Finn, and the show will spend the next 10 seasons, 4 specials, and an entire spin-off series taking him apart, putting him back together, splitting him into pieces, scattering those pieces across timelines and dimensions, and the afterlife itself, and discovering through the process that there is no single answer to the question of who Finn is. There are only versions, dozens of them, each one real, each one incomplete. That is what this video is about, and it is going to take a while, because the versions of Finn are not a list. They are a labyrinth. Each version connects to every other version through themes and echoes and pieces of shared identity that the show spent a decade building into one of the most complex character studies in the history of animated television. If you are here to fall asleep, you are in the right place. If you are here to think about what it means to be a person when the definition of a person keeps changing, you are also in the right place. Subscribing to Pine Hat is free and genuinely helps us keep making these long, quiet videos. Now, let us begin with the version of Finn that most people know, because that is the version that every other version is measured against, and also the version that the show works hardest to complicate. The Finn you meet in the first episode, the one voiced by Jeremy Shada, the one who announces himself as an adventurer and a hero and a righteous dude without a flicker of self-doubt, is not simple. He looks simple. The show presents him as simple at first because the show understands that simplicity is a kind of armor, and armor is the thing that heroes wear before the world teaches them that armor is not enough. Finn at 12 is a bundle of instincts dressed up as a person. He fights because fighting feels right. He helps because helping feels right. He does not have a philosophy. He does not have a worldview. He has reflexes. Good reflexes, generous reflexes, reflexes that point him toward kindness and courage in almost every situation, but reflexes nonetheless. And reflexes are not the same thing as choices. The show's first great project with Finn is turning his reflexes into choices. This happens slowly, across seasons, through a series of experiences that strip away the certainty he started with and replace it with something harder and more valuable. The ability to choose the right thing even when the right thing is not obvious, even when the right thing hurts, even when the right thing requires giving up something he wants, which is a skill that 12-year-old Finn does not have and 17-year-old Finn has learned through suffering. By the time the series finale airs on September 3rd, 2018, Finn is 17. He has lost his right arm and grown it back with a prosthetic. He has lost his father, who turned out to be a cosmic criminal. He has loved Bubblegum and been rejected. He has loved Flame Princess and destroyed the relationship through his own immaturity. He has fought the Lich, the embodiment of extinction. He has watched his friends go to war. He has held a dying version of himself in his arms. He has traveled to alternate timelines, lived entire lives in other dimensions, discovered that his soul is older than the world itself, and emerged from all of it still standing, still kind, still choosing to be good in a world that does not always reward goodness. That is the main timeline Finn, the original, the trunk of the tree from which every other version branches. But the show does not stop there, and the reason it does not stop there is the reason this video exists. Adventure Time understood something about identity that most shows never attempt. Identity is not singular. You are not one person. You are the sum of every version of yourself that has ever existed. Every version that could have existed, every version that exists in someone else's imagination, and every version that will exist after you are gone. Finn is not one boy. Finn is an idea of a boy, expressed across dozens of variations, and the variations do not compete with each other. They complete each other. Each version reveals something about Finn that the other versions cannot, and together, taken as a whole, they form a portrait of a character that is more complete, more human, more real than any single version could be on its own. To understand this, you have to go backward before you can go forward. You have to start with the oldest version of Finn, the one that predates the boy, the one that predates the world, the one that has been traveling through existence since before existence had a name. The blue catalyst comet is not Finn. It is not a person. It is not conscious in the way that you or Finn would understand consciousness. It is a cosmic object, a force, a piece of the universe's fundamental structure that periodically crashes into Earth and changes everything. The catalyst comets appear in Adventure Time as agents of transformation, arriving every 1,000 years to reshape the world. And they are neither good nor evil. They are change itself. They are the universe's way of shuffling the deck. In the Season 6 episode The Comet, which aired on June 5th, 2015, Finn confronts the latest catalyst comet, which appears to him as a manifestation of pure cosmic energy, and offers him a choice. He can leave his physical form behind and become one with the comet, transcending the material world entirely, or he can stay. He can remain Finn, remain human, remain bound to a body and a life and a world that will continue to hurt him and disappoint him and demand things from him that he is not always sure he can give. Finn chooses to stay. He chooses the body, the limitations, the pain, the humanity, and the comet tells him before it leaves that this is not the first time they have had this conversation. Finn's soul, the essential spark that makes him Finn, has been traveling through existence since the beginning. It was the blue catalyst comet. It was a butterfly. It was a series of lives that the show does not name. It was Shoko, and now it is Finn. And after Finn, it will be something else. This is the deepest version of Finn, the one that exists beneath all the others. And it reframes everything the show has been doing. Finn's heroism is not random. It is not the product of growing up with a magical dog and a world full of adventures. It is the expression of a soul that has been choosing to engage with the world since the beginning of time. The comet crashes. The butterfly flies. Shoko steals and betrays and dies. Finn fights and loves and breaks and heals. Each life is different. Each life has its own shape and its own suffering and its own specific, unrepeatable beauty. But the impulse beneath all of them is the same. The impulse to be present, to participate, to refuse the cosmic detachment that the comet offers, and instead dive into the mess of being alive. This matters because it changes the way you understand every other version of Finn. Every alternate Finn, every parallel universe Finn, every imaginary Finn and future Finn, and dead Finn is a variation on this same theme. A soul that keeps choosing to engage. The variations are different. The contexts are different. The outcomes are wildly, sometimes heartbreakingly different. But the essential choice, the choice to be present, the choice to stay when leaving would be easier. That runs through every version like a thread that cannot be cut. Shoko is the version of Finn that the show reveals in the Season 5 episode The Vault, which aired on September 16, 2013. She is one of Finn's past lives, and she is also the one that haunts him most directly, because she is the one whose unfinished business reaches across centuries to disturb his sleep. Shoko was a thief. She was a one-armed girl, her right arm sold by her parents for a computer before they abandoned her at a dojo. She survived on the margins of a younger, wilder Ooh, taking jobs from criminal gangs, stealing things for money, living the kind of life that people live when they have been discarded by the people who were supposed to protect them. She had a tiger, a companion that the show implies is a past life of Jake, and this detail, once you notice it, adds a layer to every scene between Finn and Jake in the main timeline. They have been finding each other across lifetime. The partnership is not an accident, it is a pattern so old that neither of them can see it. Shoko was hired by the Bath Boy gang to steal an amulet from Princess Bubblegum. This is a younger Bubblegum, a Bubblegum still building the Candy Kingdom from scratch. And Shoko infiltrates her trust, befriends her, works alongside her, and then, in a scene that the show films with devastating restraint, she does. She steals the amulet, she is caught by the Gumball Guardians, blasted by their lasers, and falls into a river of toxic waste. She crawls out, mutated and dying, and drags herself to the edge of the Candy Kingdom, where she collapses near a small tree sapling and dies. What makes Shoko devastating is not the tragedy, although the tragedy is considerable. It is the mirror. Shoko is Finn without the things that make Finn heroic. She has the same soul. She has the same impulse to connect, the same desire for something better, the same instinct that draws her toward Bubblegum the way Finn is drawn toward Bubblegum. But she does not have Jake. She does not have a family. She does not have a world that supports her. She has been abandoned and exploited and pushed into a life that requires her to betray the people she is drawn to. And the result is a life that ends in failure, in mutation, in a death so lonely that her ghost spends centuries trying to resolve it. Shoko tells you what Finn could have been without love. That is her function in the mythology. She is the version of Finn that exists when the soul's impulse to connect is not met by a world that allows connection. She wanted what Finn wants. She reached for it the way Finn reaches for it. But the world she was born into did not reach back. And the gap between reaching and receiving is the gap between Finn and Shoko, between the hero and the ghost, between a life that flourishes and a life that ends in toxic waste at the edge of someone else's kingdom. The show does not linger on this comparison. It does not spell it out. It trusts you to feel it, to carry the weight of Shoko's story alongside the lightness of Finn's, and to understand that the distance between them is not talent or virtue or destiny, but circumstance. Finn is not a better soul than Shoko. He is the same soul in better circumstances. And the show's refusal to moralize about this, its refusal to say that Finn earned his good life and Shoko deserved her bad one, is one of the most ethically sophisticated moves in the entire series. Between Shoko and Finn, the soul passed through other forms that the show mentions but does not explore in detail. A butterfly, a thing the show does not name. Other lives, other contexts, other versions of the same essential impulse expressing itself through whatever body and whatever world it found itself in. The show's reincarnation system is not Buddhist, it is not Hindu. It is not any recognizable religious framework. It is something the show invented, a system in which souls move through the world in patterns that rhyme without repeating, carrying the emotional residue of their previous lives without carrying the specific memories. Finn does not remember being Shoko, not consciously, but Shoko's unresolved guilt manifests in Finn's dreams as a ghost, and Finn, without knowing why, feels compelled to resolve the guilt by returning the stolen amulet to Bubblegum. The past life does not control the present one, but it haunts it. It shapes it in ways that the present self cannot see but can feel. The way you sometimes feel the weight of something you cannot name, a sadness that belongs to no specific memory, a pull toward a person or a place that you cannot explain. This is what reincarnation means in Adventure Time, not the recycling of a person, the continuation of a theme. The soul is not Finn. The soul is the thing that becomes Finn when the conditions are right, and becomes Shoko when the conditions are different, and becomes a butterfly when the conditions are simpler, and becomes a comet when the conditions are cosmic. The soul is the constant, the person is the variable, and the versions of Finn are the evidence of this. The same constant expressed through different variables, producing different people who share nothing except the deepest, most fundamental orientation toward the world, which is the orientation that says, I choose to be here. I choose the body and the pain, and the limitation over the cosmic detachment of floating through space as a ball of light. Now let us talk about the version of Finn that is, in some ways, the most unsettling. The Finn who lives a different life, not a past life, not a future life, a parallel life, a life that exists alongside his own, in a dimension adjacent to his own, in a world that asks the question, what if things had gone differently? Farmworld Finn appears in the Season 5 premiere, a two-part episode called Finn the Human and Jake the Dog, which aired on November 12, 2012. The premise is simple and devastating. Finn uses his wish from Prismo, the wish-granting entity, to wish that the Lich had never existed. The result is not a better world. It is a different one. The Mushroom War still happened, but differently. The Ice King's crown was never activated in the same way. Simon Petrikov froze the bomb but was killed by its detonation. And in the altered timeline, 1,000 years later, there is a boy named Finn Mertens who lives on a farm with his family and his dog, and who has never heard of the Land of Oo because the Land of Oo, as the main timeline knows it, does not exist. Farmworld Finn is recognizably Finn. He has the same face. He has the same basic personality, the same instinct to protect, the same reflex toward heroism. But his world is different. And because his world is different, he is different. He is softer, more sheltered, less scarred. He has both arms, a family that loves him, a quiet life in a quiet world. He has never fought the Lich because the Lich was never born. He has never lost anything because his world has not demanded that he lose anything. He is, in a sense, the Finn that Finn might have been if the world had been kinder. And the show presents this as something that is simultaneously appealing and horrifying. Because Farmworld Finn is also fragile. He does not have the resilience that main timeline Finn built through suffering. He does not have the moral compass that was forged by making difficult choices under impossible pressure. When the Ice King's crown appears in his world, when the temptation of power presents itself, Farmworld Finn does not resist it the way main timeline Finn would. He puts on the crown, he becomes Ice Finn. He is consumed by its power, driven mad by its influence, and the world around him begins to freeze and die. This is the show making an argument about suffering that it will continue to make for the rest of its run. The argument is not that suffering is good. The argument is not that pain builds character in some simplistic motivational poster way. The argument is that the person you are is inseparable from the things you have survived, and a version of you that has not survived anything is not a better version. It is a different version. It is a version that might be happier, might be more comfortable, might sleep better at night, but it is also a version that breaks when the world finally demands something of it. Because it has never had to be strong, and strength is not a trait you are born with. It is a skill you build by needing it, by having no choice but to build it, by standing in a place where the only options are collapse or grow and choosing over and over to grow. Farmworld Finn collapses. He puts on the crown and he collapses. And the collapse is not his fault, any more than main timeline Finn's resilience is his achievement. Neither version chose the world they were born into. Neither version earned the circumstances that shaped them. The show is not interested in blame, it is interested in truth. And the truth is that you are what your world has made you. And a different world would have made you different, and whether that different version would be better or worse is a question that does not have an answer, because better and worse are not properties of people, they are properties of circumstances. Farm World Finn returns in the Season 7 episode Crossover, which aired on November 19th, 2015, when the two timelines briefly intersect. Main timeline Finn meets his alternate self, and the encounter is not triumphant. It is sad. Farm World Finn's world has deteriorated. The Crown's influence has spread. The quiet farm, the loving family, the sheltered life, all of it has been contaminated by a power that Farm World Finn was not equipped to resist. And main timeline Finn, looking at his alternate self, sees both a mirror and a warning. There but for the grace of suffering go I. There is a version of me that never learned to be strong, and he is drowning. The Pillow World Finn is, depending on how you read it, either the most comforting or the most devastating version of Finn in the entire series. He appears in the Season 5 episode Pahoy, which aired on April 8th, 2013, and he lives from the audience's perspective, an entire life in 22 minutes. The setup is almost absurdly domestic. Finn is upset about a text message from Flame Princess. He builds a pillow fort to clear his head. He crawls inside the fort, passes through a doorway that should not exist, and emerges in Pillow World, a dimension made entirely of pillows and populated by pillow people. He does not know how he got there. He does not know how to get back, and so, in the absence of any other option, he does what Finn always does. He adapts, he engages, he builds a life. He grows up in Pillow World. He marries a pillow woman named Rosalina. They have 2 children, Jay and Bonnie. He becomes a respected member of the community. He searches for the door back to his world, the way a person searches for something they have lost, with decreasing urgency and increasing acceptance that it may not be found. He grows old. He has grandchildren. He dies. Jonathan Frakes, the actor who played Commander Riker on Star Trek The Next Generation, voices the adult and elderly versions of Pillow World Finn. And the casting is a choice that the show makes with full awareness of its implications. Frakes' voice is warm and deep and carries the weight of a life lived fully. And when elderly Finn speaks, you hear not just the character, but the specific timbre of a voice that has been through decades of experience. Elderly Finn dies in his bed, surrounded by his family. And as he dies, his spirit rises through a void, bounces off the tongue of Golb, the show's ultimate cosmic entity, and emerges from the top of the pillow fort as a child again. He has forgotten everything, the entire life, the marriage, the children, the grandchildren, the decades of daily experience, all of it is gone. Finn climbs out of the pillow fort. Jake asks him what happened in there, and Finn says he cannot remember. This is one of the most philosophically loaded 11 minutes in television history, and the show treats it as a throwaway. It never mentions Pillow World again in the main series. Rosalind and the children are never referenced. The life Finn lived in Pillow World is treated by the narrative as a dream, something that happened and then did not happen, something that was real and then was not real, and the show moves on. But you cannot move on from it if you think about it for more than 30 seconds. Because the question Pillow World raises is not a small question. It is the question. If you live an entire life, if you love people and raise children, they grow old and die, and then you wake up and none of it happened, did it happen? Were those people real? Was that love real? Was that version of Finn, the one who held Rosalind's hand and watched his children grow, was he a real person? Or was he a dream that a 13-year-old had in a pillow fort? The show does not answer this question. The show presents it and then walks away from it, which is the most Adventure Time thing the show could possibly do, because Adventure Time has never believed that questions need answers. Questions need to be asked. They need to be felt. They need to sit in the back of your mind at 3 in the morning, doing the quiet, invisible work of changing the way you think about your own life. And the question of Pillow World, the question of whether a temporary life is a real life, is doing that work right now, inside you, whether you notice it or not. Because your life is temporary too. Your relationships are temporary. Your body is temporary. Everything you love and everything you build and everything you care about is going to end. And when it ends, there will be no objective observer to certify that it was real. The only evidence that your life happened will be the memories of the people who shared it. And those memories are imperfect. And those people are also temporary. And eventually, everything you were will be as forgotten as Pillow World Finn's marriage. And the show asks, does that make it less real? Does the forgetting undo the living? Does the waking cancel the dream? No, that is the answer the show gives, not through dialogue, but through structure. Because Pillow World Finn's life is presented with the same care, the same emotional weight, the same narrative sincerity as main timeline Finn's life. The show does not treat it as less real. The animation does not become cheaper. The music does not become less beautiful. The love between Finn and Rosalind is drawn with the same tenderness as the love between any characters in the main timeline. The show takes Pillow World seriously, and by taking it seriously, it argues that temporary things are not less real than permanent things. They are just shorter, and shorter is not a synonym for less meaningful. A life that lasts 22 minutes and a life that lasts 80 years are equally real to the person living them. The difference is duration. The difference is not reality. The dungeon-trained Finn is a version that exists only as a possibility, a future that almost happened but did not, and the show presents it in the Season 5 episode Dungeon Train, which aired on March 17, 2014. The premise is that Finn discovers a train that moves through an endless dungeon, each car containing a new monster and a new treasure, and Finn loves it. He loves the simplicity of it. Walk into a car, fight a monster, get a treasure, move to the next car, repeat forever. No moral complexity, no heartbreak, no growth required, just the pure, uncomplicated satisfaction of the hero cycle, stripped of everything that makes it painful, and reduced to its most addictive elements. Jake recognizes what is happening before Finn does. The train is not an adventure. It is a trap. It is the version of heroism that asks nothing of you except repetition. The version that feels like purpose but is actually avoidance. The version that keeps you too busy fighting to notice that you are not growing. And Finn almost stays. He almost chooses the train. He almost becomes Dungeon Train Finn, the version of Finn who fights forever without changing, who accumulates treasure without accumulating wisdom, who stays in motion without going anywhere. He gets off the train. Jake convinces him, not through argument, but through presence, through the simple fact of being there and being worried and being the kind of friend who tells you the truth, even when the truth is that the thing you love is killing you. Finn gets off the train and goes home, and the show moves on, but the train does not stop. The show's final shot of the episode shows the train continuing through the dungeon without Finn, and the implication is clear. The train is always there. The option to retreat into simplicity, to choose repetition over growth, to stay on the train and fight the same fights forever, that option never goes away. Dungeon Trained Finn is the version of Finn that exists as a permanent temptation, the version that whispers every time things get hard that there is an easier way. And the fact that Finn got off the train does not mean he will never get back on. The fact that you got off your train, whatever your train was, whatever the thing was that kept you busy without keeping you alive, does not mean the train has stopped running. It is still there. It is always still there. And the only thing keeping you off it is the same thing that kept Finn off it. Someone who loves you enough to tell you the truth. Now we come to the version of Finn that the show builds over the course of 3 seasons, and that represents, for many fans, the most emotionally complex thing the series ever attempted. The Finn Sword, and the being it eventually becomes, Fern. The Finn Sword is created in the Season 6 episode Is That You?, which aired on January 22, 2015. The circumstances of its creation are characteristically bizarre. Finn and Jake are performing a memorial ritual for Prismo, the wish-granting entity, and the ritual creates a paradox in which an alternate version of Finn is separated from the timeline. This alternate Finn, who existed for only a few moments before being sealed inside the blade, becomes the Finn Sword, a weapon that is also a person, a sword that contains a living consciousness, a tool that has feelings and fears and desires and cannot express any of them because it is a sword. Think about that for a moment. There is a version of Finn who is conscious, who has all of Finn's memories and personality and capacity for suffering, who is trapped inside a weapon that someone else swings. He cannot speak unless spoken to in a specific way. He cannot act independently. He cannot choose to fight or not fight. He is wielded. He is used. He is a hero who has been reduced to an object, and the show treats this with a kind of casual horror that is more disturbing than any overt darkness could be. Finn carries the Finn Sword around and uses it in battle and does not, for most of the time he possesses it, fully grapple with the fact that he is swinging a version of himself at monsters. The sword is him. He is hitting things with himself. The Finn Sword raises the question that will dominate the rest of Finn's story. What do you owe to the versions of yourself that you have left behind? The alternate Finn who was sealed in the sword did not choose to be sealed. He was sacrificed by the timeline for the convenience of the narrative, and main timeline Finn benefits from the sacrifice without fully acknowledging what was lost. This is not a failure of character. It is a failure of comprehension. Finn does not know how to think about a version of himself that is both him and not him, both alive and not alive, both a person and an object. The Finn Sword exists in a category that does not have a name, and Finn, like most people confronted with something that does not fit into their existing categories, responds by not thinking about it too hard. And then the grass sword enters the picture and everything becomes worse. The grass sword is a cursed weapon that bonded itself to Finn's arm in the Season 5 episode Blade of Grass, which aired on March 10th, 2014. It is alive. It is part of Finn. It cannot be removed. It acts on its own sometimes, protecting Finn in ways he does not control, as if the sword has its own will and its own definition of what protection means. The grass sword is a metaphor for the parts of yourself that you cannot control. The instincts and impulses and reactive patterns that are so deeply embedded in your personality that they feel like external forces. You did not choose them. You cannot remove them. They are yours, and they will act on your behalf whether you want them to or not. In the Season 8 episode Reboot, which aired on September 17, 2016, the grass sword and the Finn sword merge. The cursed weapon bonds with the conscious weapon, the uncontrollable instinct merges with the trapped person, and the result is a new being. Not a sword, not a curse. A person, a green, grass-covered person who has all of Finn's memories, all of Finn's personality, all of Finn's desires and fears, but who is not Finn. He takes the name Fern. Fern is the version of Finn that the show uses to explore the most painful question a person can ask. What happens when you realize you are a copy? Not a child, not a descendant, not a new person inspired by an old one, but a literal copy, a duplicate who shares every memory and every feeling with the original and who cannot escape the knowledge that the original exists and is living the life that the copy remembers as his own. Fern tries to be Finn. He tries to take Finn's place, not out of malice, but out of a desperation so deep that it does not have a bottom. He remembers being Finn. He remembers Jake, and the treehouse, and the adventures, and the feelings. His memories tell him that he is Finn. His body tells him that he is not. And the gap between what his memories say and what his body says is a gap that no amount of effort can close. Because identity is not just memory. Identity is also the body that carries the memory, the context that surrounds the memory, the relationships that confirm the memory. And Fern has none of these. He has the memories of being Finn. He does not have the life of being Finn. And the difference between remembering a life and living it is the difference between a photograph and the person in the photograph. The show traces Fern's trajectory with excruciating honesty. He tries to be independent. He fails. He tries to be useful. He is useful, but being useful is not the same as being himself. And the frustration of having no self to be drives him to increasingly desperate acts. He is manipulated by Uncle Gumbald. He is corrupted by the Green Knight, the manifestation of the Grass Curse's darkest impulse. He becomes a villain, not because he wants to be a villain, but because being a villain is the only identity available to him that is not Finn. If he cannot be the original, he can at least be the opposite of the original. He can be the shadow. He can be the enemy. He can be the thing that Finn has to fight. And in being fought, at least be seen. This is one of the most psychologically realistic depictions of identity crisis in any medium. Fern's villainy is not evil. It is grief. It is the grief of a person who was born into an impossible situation, who was given memories of a life he cannot have, who was told by every atom of his being that he is someone that he is not, and who, in the absence of any other option, turns the grief outward and lets it become rage. Fern does not hate Finn. Fern loves Finn in the way that a person who has lost themselves loves the version of themselves that is still intact. The hatred is the love turned inside out. The violence is the intimacy expressed in the only language Fern has left. In the series finale, Fern dies in Finn's arms. He dissolves. He comes apart. And from his remains, a seed grows, and the seed becomes a tree. And the tree envelops the treehouse, and the Finn sword is embedded in its canopy. 1,000 years later, Shermie pulls the sword from the tree and begins a new adventure. Fern does not survive as Fern. He does not survive as Finn. He survives as landscape. He survives as the ground on which the next story begins. His identity crisis, the impossible question of who he is, resolves not through an answer but through a transformation so complete that the question dissolves. He is not Finn. He is not Finn. He is a tree. And the tree does not agonize over identity. The tree just grows. What Fern teaches you, if you are willing to learn it, is that the question, who am I, does not always have an answer. Sometimes the question itself is the problem. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop asking and start becoming, not becoming a specific person or a specific thing, but becoming whatever the next moment requires you to be. Fern could not do this while he was alive. He was too trapped by his memories, too haunted by the ghost of the life he remembered but could not have. But in death, in the radical transformation from person to plant, he achieves something that looks, from the outside, like peace. The tree is at peace. The sword is at rest. And the next hero, who knows nothing about any of this, picks up the sword and walks into the world unburdened by the weight of Fern's impossible question. Fiona is the version of Finn that exists at the intersection of fiction and reality, and her story is, in its way, the most meta thing the show ever attempted. She first appears in the Season 3 episode Fiona and Cake, which aired on January 2nd, 2012, and she is introduced as the star of a fanfiction written by the Ice King. This is the show's first joke about Fiona, and it is a good joke. The lonely, delusional villain of Adventure Time is writing gender-swapped fanfiction about the heroes of his own show. He has turned Finn into a girl named Fiona, and Jake into a cat named Cake, and the stories he writes are romantic and melodramatic, and exactly the kind of thing that a lonely old man who has forgotten his own past would write to comfort himself. But the joke becomes something else entirely over the course of the series. Because Fiona is not just a character in Ice King stories. She exists. She is real. The show reveals across multiple episodes and eventually in the spin-off series Adventure Time Fiona and Cake that Fiona is a real person in a real universe, one of many alternate realities in the Adventure Time multiverse. Ice King did not create her. He received her. His stories about Fiona were not inventions. They were transmissions, signals from another dimension leaking into his damaged mind. And the fanfiction he thought he was writing was actually a kind of prophecy, an imperfect window into a parallel world that he had no way of knowing was real. This changes everything about how you understand Fiona. She is not a parody of Finn. She is not a copy. She is a parallel expression of the same archetype, the same cosmic pattern that produces heroes in every dimension, the same impulse that the blue catalyst comet carries through every incarnation. Fiona is what Finn looks like in a different world, with different rules, different relationships, different everything. And the fact that she is female is the least interesting difference between them, although it is the most visible one. The most interesting difference is this. Fiona is a character who becomes aware that she might be fictional. In the spin-off series, which premiered on September 28, 2023, Fiona is stripped of her powers and dropped into a universe where Adventure Time is just a cartoon, where her entire world is revealed to be something that may or may not exist independently of the mind that imagined it. And she has to navigate the existential horror of this realization while also trying to save her world from the Scarab, a cosmic entity determined to destroy unauthorized universes. Fiona's crisis is a version of Finn's crisis, amplified to the point of absurdity and then played entirely straight. Finn's versions ask, "Who am I?" Fiona's version asks, "Am I?" Not who she is, but whether she is. Whether a person who exists inside a story, who was possibly written into existence by a lonely wizard who might not have an independent existence apart from the narrative that contains her, whether that person is real, whether her feelings count, whether her suffering matters, whether her love for Cake, her love for her world, her love for the life she was living before the rug was pulled out from under it, whether any of it is more than words on a page or images on a screen. The spin-off's answer is yes, Fiona is real. Her world is real. The things she felt and the choices she made and the life she lived are as real as any life in any universe. And the fact that someone else may have imagined her into existence does not diminish her, because every life is imagined into existence by something outside itself. Your parents imagined you before you were born. The culture you grew up in imagined the categories you live inside. The language you speak imagined the thoughts you are capable of thinking. You are, in a very real sense, someone else's story. And the question of whether that makes you less real is a question that does not deserve the dignity of an answer, because you are here, and you are feeling things, and you are listening to this. And that is enough. That is more than enough. Fiona is also the version of Finn that exists in the gap between creator and creation. And this is where the show gets genuinely philosophical. Ice King created Fiona, except he did not. He received her, but his reception shaped her. His loneliness colored her stories. His desire for love gave her a romantic arc that she did not ask for. His damaged mind filtered her world through a lens of melodrama and fantasy. Fiona, as Ice King wrote her, is not exactly the Fiona who actually exists in the parallel universe. She is a version of a version, a reflection of a reflection. And the distance between who she is and who Ice King said she was is the distance between any person and the story someone else tells about them. You know this distance. You live inside it. The version of you that your parents describe is not the version of you that your friends describe, and neither of them is the version of you that you describe to yourself. And none of them is the version that exists in the quiet of your own head, when no one is watching and you are not performing anything for anyone. You are all of these versions simultaneously, and none of them is more real than the others, and the question of which one is the real you is the wrong question. The right question is, Can you hold all of them at once? Can you be the person your parents remember, and the person your friends experience, and the person you imagine yourself to be, and the person you actually are in the dark, all at the same time, without needing to choose? Fiona can. Fiona does. And her ability to hold multiple versions of herself simultaneously, to be both Ice King's character and her own person, both a fictional construct and a real being, is the model that the show offers for how to live with the multiplicity of identity. You do not have to pick one. You can be all of them. The versions do not compete. They coexist. There are other alternate Finns scattered across the series, smaller in narrative weight, but no less interesting in what they reveal. Weirdo Finn appears in the Season 8 episode Mysterious Island, and he is a rabbit-like creature living in the grotto world, accessible only through a whirlpool. He is unrecognizable as Finn by any physical measure. He does not look like Finn. He does not sound like Finn. He does not act like Finn in any obvious way. And yet the show identifies him as a Finn, a version of the same soul expressed through a body and a world so different that the connection is visible only to someone who knows to look for it. Weirdo Finn suggests that the thing that makes Finn Finn is not the hat or the sword or the heroism or the human body. It is something smaller and more durable than any of those things. It is a quality of being that persists across forms that share nothing except that quality. Winter World Finn is another glimpse of an alternate version, a Finn who is the champion of the Slime Kingdom and is in a relationship with that dimension's version of Slime Princess. He occupies a different social position, a different romantic context, a different world, and yet the show presents him as Finn, as recognizably Finn, as undeniably Finn, because the essential orientation, the willingness to engage, the instinct to protect, the reflexive courage is intact. The circumstances are different, the soul is the same. And then there is one more small detail that runs through almost every alternate Finn the show ever created. A detail so consistent that it cannot be coincidence. They all lose their right arm. Main timeline Finn loses his arm to the grass sword. Farm World Finn loses his arm after putting on the crown. Shoko was born without her right arm, her parents having sold it. Pillow World Finn grows old with both arms intact, but he is the exception. The Finn who lives a complete life in a world without conflict. Every other Finn, every Finn who engages with the struggle of existence, loses the arm. The show never explains why. It never offers a mythology for this pattern. It simply presents it over and over, and trusts the audience to feel its weight. The arm is sacrifice. That is the reading that makes the most sense, and it is a reading the show supports without ever confirming. To be Finn, to be the version of the soul that chooses engagement over detachment, costs something. It costs a piece of you, a literal piece, and the piece you lose is always the same because the sacrifice is always the same, the sacrifice of wholeness for purpose. Finn cannot be both complete and heroic. He cannot be both safe and good. The arm is the price of the sword, the loss is the cost of the choosing, and every version of Finn pays it across every timeline in every world, because the cost is not specific to one world or one timeline. It is built into the pattern. It is what engagement costs. It is what it has always cost. The last version of Finn that the show presents in the main continuity is the one that should be the simplest and is in fact the most complex. Dead Finn. Finn after death. Finn as a soul navigating the afterlife. Finn as a being who is no longer defined by a body, a world, a set of relationships, or a story, and who must figure out who he is when all of those things have been stripped away. This version appears in the Distant Lands special Together Again, which premiered on May 20th, 2021. The premise is stated simply, Finn has died. He died of natural causes, having lived a full life, and he enters the afterlife eager to find Jake, who died before him. David Bradley, the British actor known for playing Argus Filch in the Harry Potter films, voices the elderly Finn in the opening moments, and the casting choice is significant because Bradley's voice carries a specific quality of exhaustion mixed with tenderness, as if every word costs something but is worth the price. Finn rushes through the gates of the land of the dead and immediately begins searching for Jake. The afterlife in Adventure Time is not a single place. It is a system of 50 dead worlds, each one offering a different version of eternity. Some are peaceful, some are horrific, some are strange beyond description. The 50th dead world, the deepest level, is a state of total serenity, a kind of nirvana where the self dissolves into peace. Jake is there. Jake has achieved the thing that Buddhism would call enlightenment, the final release from the cycle of suffering, and he is content. But Finn cannot reach him. The dead worlds are controlled by New Death, the son of the original Death, a being who has weaponized the afterlife for his own purposes. New Death has been waiting for Finn, because Finn is the only person Jake would leave the 50th dead world for. And New Death needs Jake out of the 50th Dead World to gain access to it and destroy all the Dead Worlds. Finn's love for Jake, the purest and most consistent thing in the entire series, is being used as a weapon against the afterlife itself. This is the version of Finn that exists after everything else has been taken away. No sword, no arm, no body, no world. No adventures to go on, no monsters to fight, no princesses to save, no identity to build or maintain. Dead Finn is just Finn. Just the soul, just the thing that remains when everything else is gone. And what remains is this: the desire to find Jake. That is it. That is the irreducible core of Finn, the thing that survives death itself, the thing that the blue catalyst comet carries through every incarnation and every timeline and every version and every world. The desire to find the person you love and be with them. Everything else, the heroism, the courage, the sword, the hat, the arm, the identity, all of it is built on top of this foundation. And when the building is demolished, when the body dies and the story ends and the identity dissolves, the foundation remains. Finn wants to find Jake. That is who he is. That is all he has ever been. The special builds to a climax in which Finn and Jake reunite, defeat New Death, and face a choice. Finn can be reincarnated, sent back into the cycle of existence, born again into a new body and a new world with no memory of who he was. Jake can return to the 50th Dead World, to the peace he earned, to the serenity of being nothing and needing nothing. They can go their separate ways. The adventure can end. Jake chooses to go with Finn. He chooses reincarnation. He chooses to leave Nirvana, to leave perfect peace, to jump back into the messy, painful, temporary world of being alive not because he needs to, but because Finn is going. Just for fun, Jake says. Just for fun. The most understated declaration of love in the history of animation. Jake does not need to be alive again. He does not need another adventure. He has already achieved the thing that every spiritual tradition describes as the ultimate goal. And he gives it up. He gives it up because his friend is going somewhere, and Jake has never, in any lifetime, been the kind of person who lets his friend go somewhere alone. They are reincarnated. The show's final image of them, in the context of Together Again, is two new beings, their forms unclear, beginning a new life in a new world, with no memory of who they were. Finn is no longer Finn. Jake is no longer Jake. They are something else, something new, something that will discover its own name and its own story and its own version of the adventure. And they are together. They are always together. The blue catalyst comet becomes a butterfly, becomes Shoko, becomes Finn, becomes Dead Finn, becomes something new. The soul moves through the world, taking form after form, and in every form, it finds Jake. In every form, it chooses engagement over detachment. In every form, it pays the cost and accepts the loss and walks into the next room and faces whatever is in there with a willingness that is not bravery exactly, but something older and simpler. The willingness to keep going, to keep choosing, to keep saying yes to a world that is not always kind, but is always interesting. The Fiona and Cake spinoff adds one more layer to Finn's story. In the second season, which aired on Max in 2024, Finn is brought back to life in the land of Oo. The details are complex and involve multiverse mechanics that the show builds across both seasons, but the essential fact is this: Finn comes back. He is alive again. He is in Oo again. And the show gives him something it had never given him before: a relationship with Huntress Wizard that is allowed to be real, to be present, to be acknowledged and reciprocated without the show pulling the rug out from under it. This is the version of Finn that the show gives as its final gift to the character. A Finn who has died and returned, who has seen what exists beyond life, who has been through the afterlife and come out the other side, and who is given the chance to live again with the knowledge that living is a choice, not a default, not an obligation. A choice. He chose to be reincarnated. He chose to come back. And in the spin-off, he is given a version of the life that all the other versions of Finn were reaching toward. A life where the heroism is not a reflex but a decision. Where the love is not unrequited or tragic or impossible, but simply present. Where the adventure continues not because the world demands it, but because Finn wants it to. This version of Finn is the one that incorporates all the others. He carries Shoko's guilt and Farm World Finn's fragility, and Pillow World Finn's knowledge that lives can be temporary and still be real, and Fern's understanding that identity is not fixed, and Fiona's awareness that stories create reality, and the Finn. Sword's experience of being used, and Dungeon Train Finn's temptation to retreat, and Dead Finn's knowledge that love survives death. He is all of them. He has always been all of them. And the show's final statement about Finn is that a person is not one thing. A person is every version of themselves that has ever existed. stacked on top of each other like layers of sediment, each one contributing something to the landscape that the world sees when it looks at you. There is a question that has been sitting underneath this entire video, a question that the versions of Finn collectively pose, but that none of them individually answers, and it is this: what makes you, you? Not in the abstract, not as a philosophical exercise. Specifically, concretely, what is the thing that makes you the person you are and not someone else? The versions of Finn offer several possible answers, and each answer is tested by the show and found to be incomplete. Memory is the first answer. You are your memories. You are the sum of the things that have happened to you, the experiences you have accumulated, the moments that burned themselves into your mind and refuse to leave. This is the answer that most people give when they are asked who they are. They tell you their story. They tell you where they came from and what they did and what happened to them. And the story is the identity. But Adventure Time dismantles this answer through Fern and through Pillow World Finn. Fern has all of Finn's memories, every single one. And Fern is not Finn. The memories are identical and the person is different, which means that memory is not sufficient for identity. Something else is required. Something that Fern does not have and Finn does. Something that exists beneath or beyond or alongside the memories, and that gives the memories their meaning. Pillow World Finn dismantles the memory answer from the other direction. Finn lives an entire life, accumulates decades of memories, and then forgets all of it. He returns to the main timeline with no memory of Pillow World, and he is still Finn. The memories are gone and the person remains, which means that memory is not necessary for identity either. You can lose your memories and still be yourself. You can gain someone else's memories and still not be them. Memory is important. Memory shapes you. But memory is not you. The body is the second answer. You are your body. You are the specific arrangement of atoms and cells and neurons that makes you physically distinct from every other person on the planet. This is the answer that science tends to give, and it has the advantage of being verifiable. You can point to your body and say, "This is me," and no one can argue with you. But Adventure Time dismantles this answer too, through Fern and the Finn Sword and Weirdo Finn and the entire reincarnation system. Fern has a different body than Finn. He is made of grass, he is green, he is structurally, physically, biologically a different being. And yet he has every claim to being Finn that the original does, except for the fact that the original got there first. Weirdo Finn has a body that is a rabbit-like creature. The blue catalyst comet has no body at all. Dead Finn has no body. The reincarnated versions of Finn have new bodies that they do not choose. If identity were the body, then every version of Finn would be a different person, and the show would have no reason to connect them. But the show does connect them. The show insists on the connection. The show says, these are all Finn, despite having different bodies, which means the body is not the thing that makes them Finn. Relationships are the third answer, and this one is harder to dismantle because it is closer to the truth. You are your relationships. You are the person your mother knows, and the person your best friend knows, and the person your partner knows, and the person your children know. You are not a solo act. You are a collaboration, a joint production between yourself and everyone who has ever loved you or hated you or needed you. This answer has weight. Jake is present in almost every version of Finn. Shoko has her tiger. Fiona has cake. The relationship between Finn and Jake is the one constant that persists across almost every incarnation. And the fact that Jake chooses to be reincarnated alongside Finn suggests that the relationship is not just a feature of identity, but is somehow constitutive of it. But even this answer has limits. Pillow World Finn has a wife and children who are not Jake, who are not anyone from the main timeline, and he is still Finn. Dead Finn, stripped of all relationships, reduced to a soul moving through the afterlife alone, is still Finn. The desire to find Jake is what defines Dead Finn, but the desire is not the same as the relationship. The desire exists even in the absence of the relationship. Finn is Finn even when Jake is not there, because the capacity for the relationship, the willingness to love someone that deeply and that unconditionally, is part of Finn's identity even when the specific person he loves that way is absent. So what is it? If it is not memory and not the body and not relationships, what is the thing that makes Finn Finn across every version, every timeline, every dimension, every life and death and rebirth? The show's answer, never stated explicitly but demonstrated across a decade of storytelling, is this: choice. You are your choices, not the specific choices you make, because those depend on circumstances, and circumstances change and a different world would produce different choices. You are the pattern of your choosing. You are the direction in which your choices point. Finn's choices across every version, across every world, point in the same direction. toward engagement, toward other people, toward the difficult, painful, rewarding act of being present in a world that does not owe you anything, and that will take everything from you eventually. Every version of Finn chooses this. The comet chooses to crash into the world rather than float past it. The butterfly chooses to fly rather than not exist. Shoko chooses to engage with Bubblegum rather than steal from her in silence. Main timeline Finn chooses to stay when the comet offers him transcendence. Farm world Finn tries to choose heroism and fails because his world did not give him the tools to succeed. But the direction of the attempt, is the same. Pillow world Finn chooses to build a life rather than search endlessly for the exit. Fern chooses to be someone even if he cannot figure out who. Fiona chooses to fight for her world even when she learns it might not be real. Dead Finn chooses to search for Jake across 50 dead worlds rather than accept the peace of oblivion. The direction is the constant. The direction is Finn. Not the body, not the memory, not the specific relationships, but the direction, the persistent, unshakable orientation toward engagement and love, and the stubborn refusal to float through the void when there is a world to crash into. And this is where the show's exploration of Finn becomes something more than a character study. It becomes a statement about you. Because you also have a direction, you also have a pattern that your choices make when you line them up and look at them from far enough away. You probably cannot see it from where you are standing, because you are too close, because you are inside the pattern, because the individual choices feel random and disconnected, and you cannot tell whether they are adding up to anything. But they are. They always are. Every choice you make, every time you engage instead of retreating, every time you show up instead of staying home, every time you say yes to something difficult and uncertain and potentially painful, you are expressing a direction. And that direction is who you are, not the specific things you have done, not the specific outcomes of your choices. The direction, the persistent, cumulative, almost invisible trajectory of all the small decisions you have ever made, pointing towards something you cannot see, but that is, nonetheless, being built. Finn cannot see it either. Finn, in any given episode, does not know that he is expressing a cosmic pattern. He does not know that his soul has been doing this since the beginning of time. He does not know that every version of himself across every dimension is making the same fundamental choice. He just knows that there is a monster in front of him, and a friend beside him, and a decision to make, and he makes it. And then he makes the next one. And then the next one. And the pattern emerges, not because he planned it, not because he understood it, but because the direction was always there. Underneath the confusion and the heartbreak and the lost arms and the failed relationships and the existential crises, the direction was always there. There is something worth exploring about the way the show uses the arm, the right arm, the limb that every version of Finn loses, across every timeline, like a tax that the universe collects from anyone who carries this particular soul. Shoko's arm was sold before she could consent to its loss. Her parents traded it for a computer, which is the most Adventure Time detail imaginable. A body part exchanged for technology, the organic sacrificed for the digital, the child's wholeness bartered away by the people who should have protected it. Shoko never chose to lose her arm. It was taken from her, and her entire life, the stealing, the betrayal of Bubblegum, the toxic waste, the death, unfolds from that original wound. She was made incomplete by someone else's choice, and her incompleteness shaped everything that followed. Main timeline Finn loses his arm in the Season 6 premiere, Wake Up, and Escape from the Citadel, which aired on April 21st, 2014. His father, Martin Mertens, is escaping from the cosmic Citadel, floating away on a piece of debris, and Finn reaches for him. He reaches with his right arm, and the grass sword, acting on its own, extends Finn's reach, stretching toward Martin as Martin drifts farther away. But Martin does not reach back. Martin does not try to grab his son. Martin floats away indifferent, and the grass sword's extension snaps, and Finn's arm comes up. This is the most important loss in the entire series, and it is important not because of the arm itself, but because of what the arm represents in the moment of its loss. Finn reaches for his father. His father does not reach back. The arm, the bridge between them, breaks, and Finn is left holding nothing, missing a piece of himself, standing in a void that was created by the simple, devastating fact that his father did not want him enough to hold on. The loss of the arm is the loss of the illusion that love is always reciprocated. Finn believed, before this moment, that wanting to connect with someone was enough to create a connection. He believed that reaching was sufficient. If you reach far enough, hard enough, sincerely enough, the other person will reach back. The arm teaches him that this is not true. Sometimes you reach and the other person floats away. Sometimes you extend yourself as far as you possibly can, past the point of physical integrity, past the point where your body can hold together, and the other person still does not grab on. And the cost of reaching that far is a piece of yourself, not a metaphorical piece, a real one, an arm. Every version of Finn learns this lesson. Farm World Finn loses his arm to the crown's corruption, the consequence of reaching for a power that did not care about him. Shoko lost her arm before she could learn anything from it, which is perhaps the cruelest version of the lesson. Sometimes the loss comes before the reaching, and you spend your whole life trying to understand a wound that was inflicted before you were old enough to remember it. The arm grows back. In the main timeline, Finn gets a prosthetic. He gets a grass arm. He gets a mechanical arm. The show gives him replacement after replacement, and each replacement is slightly different, slightly imperfect, slightly not the original, and the show uses this to make another point about loss. You can replace what you lost. You can build something new in the space where the old thing was. But the replacement is not the same as the original, and the act of replacing does not undo the act of losing. You are, forever after, a person who has lost something and built something in its place. And the building is admirable and the loss is real, and both of these things are true at the same time. The arm is also, and this is the reading that the show embeds most deeply, a visual representation of the relationship between heroism and sacrifice. Finn is a hero. Heroes lose things. That is the contract. You do not get to save the world and keep all of your pieces. The world takes a piece of you every time you save it, and the piece it takes is the piece you reached with, the piece that extended toward the thing you were trying to hold on to, the piece that broke because you were trying too hard to connect with something that was already leaving. Consider what this means across the full span of Finn's incarnations. The soul that has been choosing engagement since the beginning of time, the soul that crashed into the world as a comet and has been choosing to stay ever since, pays the same price in every life. The arm, the reach, the extension of self towards something outside the self, and the breaking that occurs when the extension is not met. This is not a punishment. It is not karma. It is physics, the physics of caring. If you reach for something hard enough, you will lose the arm you reached with. That is the cost. And Finn pays it. Every version of Finn pays it, and every version after paying it keeps reaching with whatever is left. That might be the single most important thing the show says about what it means to be a person. You will lose pieces of yourself. The people you love will not always love you back. The world you are trying to save will not always cooperate with your saving. The arm you extend will sometimes break, and you will keep reaching. Not because reaching always works, not because the outcome justifies the cost, but because reaching is what you do. Reaching is who you are. The arm breaks and the direction remains. There is a version of this conversation that belongs to you, specifically, and the show knows it, which is why it tells the story this way. You have lost things. You have reached for people who did not reach back. You have extended yourself past the point of comfort, past the point of safety, past the point where a reasonable person would have pulled back and protected what they had. And you have lost a piece of yourself in the reaching. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was a belief about the world that you held so tightly that when the world proved it wrong, a piece of you came off with it. Whatever it was, you lost it, and the loss left a space, and you built something in the space, and the something you built is not the same as the thing you lost, but it is yours, and it works, and you are still here reaching with whatever is left. That is who you are. That is what all the versions of Finn are telling you. You are the person who keeps reaching, not because reaching is rational, not because the cost-benefit analysis favors it, but because reaching is the direction your choices point. And the direction is more you than the arm ever was. Let us talk about the version of Finn that the show never creates but that exists, implicitly, in every frame of every episode. The Finn who does not choose. The Finn who stays on the comet. The Finn who accepts transcendence. The Finn who says yes to the cosmic offer of floating through the universe as a ball of light, free from pain and loss and the tyranny of having a body and a story and an ending. This version of Finn does not appear in the show because this version of Finn is not Finn. The moment the soul accepts the offer, the moment it chooses detachment over engagement, it ceases to be the thing that the show recognizes as Finn. Finn is defined by refusal. He refuses the comet's offer. He refuses the peace of the 50th dead world. He refuses every opportunity the universe gives him to stop being a person and start being something simpler, something that does not hurt, something that does not lose arms and relationships and certainty. He refuses, and in the refusal, he becomes himself. This refusal is not stubbornness. It is not foolishness. It is a moral position that the show builds across 10 seasons, and that becomes by the end as clear and as resonant as any thesis in any work of art. The pain of being alive is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. The pain is the price of the beauty. The loss is the cost of the love. The broken arm is the consequence of the reaching, and the reaching is the whole point. You cannot have the adventure without the risk. You cannot have the love without the potential for loss. You cannot have the identity without the crisis. And the soul that understands this, the soul that chooses the full catastrophe of being human over the serene emptiness of being cosmic, that soul is Finn. In every body, in every world, in every life. The show offers one more variation on this theme that is worth sitting with, and it comes through the character who is not Finn, but who is the closest thing to Finn that the show creates from scratch. Shermie, the cat-like creature who appears in the series finale and the Together Again special, who picks up the Finn sword from Fern's tree 1,000 years after the events of the series, and who begins a new adventure without knowing anything about the old one. Shermie is not a reincarnation of Finn. The show is careful about this. Finn's reincarnation is a separate event, shown at the end of Together Again, and Shermie is not the result of that event. Shermie is something different. Shermie is what happens when the pattern persists without the specific soul. Shermie is proof that the direction Finn embodied is not unique to Finn's soul. It is a property of the universe. The universe produces, independently over and over, in bodies and minds that have no connection to each other, the same essential pattern. A small, brave being who chooses engagement over safety, who picks up a sword and walks toward the horizon, who is accompanied by a larger, steadier companion. The pattern is not Finn. The pattern is bigger than Finn. Finn was just one expression of it, and the most recent one before Shermie, and Shermie will not be the last. This is perhaps the most comforting thing the show offers, and it offers it so quietly that you might miss it if you are not listening carefully. The direction does not need you. The pattern does not depend on any single soul to carry it. If Finn had chosen the comet, if Finn had stayed on the dungeon train, if Finn had remained in the 50th dead world, the universe would have produced another hero, not as a replacement, not as a copy, as an independent expression of the same underlying truth, that the world needs people who choose to engage with it, and the world will produce those people whether any specific soul volunteers for the job or not. But Finn did volunteer. Every version of Finn volunteered. And the volunteering, the choosing, the reaching with an arm that you know will break, that is what makes it matter. Not the outcome, not the success, not the triumph. The choosing. The choosing is the thing that the show celebrates, across every version, in every world, through every incarnation. Not what you accomplish, what you attempt, not where you arrive. The direction you travel, not who you are, who you choose to be. There is a way of reading the versions of Finn that the show probably did not intend, but that holds up under scrutiny. And it is this. The versions of Finn are a map of the stages of a human life. Not literally. Not in the sense that each version corresponds to a specific age or phase, but in the sense that the versions, taken in a certain order, describe the experience of growing up, growing old, and making peace with the fact that you are not one person. You are many people stacked on top of each other, each one a version of yourself that existed for a while and then gave way to the next. The blue catalyst comet is birth. Not birth as in the moment of delivery, but birth as in the state of pure potential, the moment before you have a body or a name or a story, the moment when you are nothing but direction and impulse, the moment when the universe has decided that you will exist, but has not yet decided what form your existence will take. The comet has no identity, it has no features, it is only trajectory. It is going somewhere, and the somewhere is the world, and the crashing into the world is the beginning of everything. Shoko is childhood, the version of yourself that existed before you had the tools to navigate the world safely. Shoko is abandoned by her parents, pushed into a life she did not choose, forced to develop survival skills that serve her in the short term and destroy her in the long term. She is the child who adapts to neglect by becoming self-sufficient in ways that are impressive and heartbreaking simultaneously. The child who learns to steal because no one taught her to earn. The child who betrays the only person who ever showed her kindness because the survival instincts that kept her alive are also the instincts that prevent her from trusting. Shoko is what happens before you get lucky, before you find your Jake, before the world gives you the circumstances that allow your soul's direction to express itself as heroism rather than as theft. Main timeline Finn is adolescence and young adulthood, the version of yourself that exists in the full flush of engagement, the version that has the energy and the certainty and the sheer physical capacity to throw itself at the world and survive the impact. Finn at 12 is all reflex. Finn at 17 is all hard-won wisdom. The distance between the two is the distance that every person travels between the beginning of adolescence and the end of it, and the show tracks this distance with more precision and more compassion than almost any other piece of media aimed at young people. Finn grows up. He grows up on screen, in real time, across real years, and the audience grows up with him. And the show trusts both Finn and the audience to handle the fact that growing up is not a single event. It is a process of becoming that does not end until the person does. Farmworld Finn is the road not taken. He is the version of yourself that exists in the alternate timeline where things went differently, where the specific combination of challenges and supports that made you who you are did not happen, where the suffering that forged your strength did not occur, where you are softer and happier and more fragile and less capable of surviving the thing that is going to hit you. Everyone has a Farmworld version. Everyone has a parallel self who grew up in different circumstances and became a different person. And the question of whether that person would be better or worse than the person you actually are is a question that torments you at 3 in the morning, and that Adventure Time answers by saying, there is no better or worse. There is only different, and different is not a judgment, it is just a fact. Pillow World Finn is the life within the life, the version of yourself that exists inside a relationship, inside a family, inside a domestic reality that feels complete and self-contained and real, even though it is temporary, even though you know on some level that it will end. Pillow World Finn is the version of you who falls in love and builds a home, and raises children and grows old with someone, and then, one day, wakes up and the life is over. And the person you shared it with is not there, and the children you raised are not there, and the house you built is not there, and you are standing in the wreckage of a pillow fort. And someone is asking you what happened, and you cannot remember. But it happened. It was real. And the fact that it ended does not mean it was not real. It means it was a life, and lives end, and ending is not the opposite of real. The Finn Sword is the version of yourself that you sacrificed for some larger purpose, the ambition you gave up, the path you did not take, the part of yourself that you sealed away inside a decision that you cannot undo. Everyone has a Finn Sword. Everyone has a version of themselves that they locked inside a choice, a version that is still alive in some sense, still conscious, still wanting things, but unable to act on those wants because the choice has already been made. The job you did not take, the city you did not move to, the person you did not call. That version of you is still in there, sealed in the blade, swinging at monsters you did not choose to fight. Fern is the midlife crisis. He is the version of yourself that wakes up one day and realizes that the life you are living is not the life you are supposed to have. That the person you are is not the person you are supposed to be. That somewhere between the beginning and now, something went wrong or something went different. And the result is a person who has all the memories of a life they were supposed to live, but is living a different one instead. Fern's anguish is the anguish of a person who can see the life they should have had and cannot reach it. And his descent into villainy is the descent that happens when that anguish is not addressed. When the gap between who you are and who you were supposed to be becomes so wide that the only options are despair and destruction. Dead Finn is old age and death. He is the version of yourself that exists after everything has been stripped away, after the body has failed and the career has ended, and the relationships have changed and the identity you spent a lifetime building has been revealed to be temporary. Dead Finn has nothing. No sword, no arm, no body, no adventures. He has only one thing: the desire to find Jake. The desire to find the person he loves, and that desire carries him across 50 dead worlds, through dangers that would make the living Finn pause, because the desire is the thing that does not die. The body dies, the identity dies, the story dies. But the desire, the direction, the reaching, that survives. That is what outlasts everything else. And reincarnated Finn is the beginning again, the new life that starts after the old one ends. The version of yourself that your children carry forward, that your friends remember, that the world builds from the materials you left behind. Reincarnated Finn does not remember being Finn. He does not remember the adventures or the heartbreak or the arm. He starts fresh with a new body and a new name and a new world. And the only thing he carries from his previous life is the direction. The same direction, the same reaching, the same choosing, the same soul expressing itself through different circumstances, producing a different person who is, in the only way that matters, the same. This is the map. This is what the versions of Finn describe. If you read them as a sequence rather than a collection, they describe the experience of being a person across time. The potential, the wounded childhood, the heroic youth, the roads not taken, the lives within lives, the sacrificed selves, the identity crises, the losses, the deaths, and the beginnings again. And the map is not specific to Finn, it is specific to everyone. You have been all of these versions. You are all of these versions right now, simultaneously, the comet and the thief, and the hero and the reflection and the dream and the sword and the copy and the ghost and the soul and the beginning again. You are not one person. You never were. You are a collection of versions, each one real, each one incomplete, each one contributing something irreplaceable to the composite that the world calls you. The show understands this. The show has always understood this. And the show's genius is that it takes this understanding, which in the hands of a lesser show would be an abstract philosophical point, and makes it emotional, makes it felt, makes it land in the chest rather than the head, because the versions of Finn are not thought experiments. They are people. They are specific, detailed, lovingly rendered people with specific fears and specific desires and specific losses, and when you watch them suffer, you do not think, this is an interesting exploration of identity. You think, this is me. You think, I have been this version. You think I am this version right now, tonight lying in the dark, listening to someone talk about a cartoon, and the cartoon is describing something that I have felt but never had words for. Adventure Time gives you the words, not directly, not through dialogue or exposition or a character turning to the camera and explaining what the show means, through structure, through the accumulated weight of a dozen versions of the same boy, each one different, each one real, each one reaching with an arm that breaks and growing a new one and reaching again. The structure is the argument, the versions are the evidence, and the conclusion is the thing you already knew but could not prove. You are not failing at being one person. You are succeeding at being many people, and the many people you are, taken together, describe something beautiful and complicated and specific and irreplaceable, something that no other collection of versions has ever described or will ever describe again. There is a conversation between Finn and the Catalyst Comet in the Season 6 episode, The Comet, that deserves to be examined in detail, because it is the single scene in the entire series where the show comes closest to stating its thesis about Finn out loud. The comet appears to Finn as a face in the void, a swirl of cosmic energy that speaks with the calm authority of something that has existed since before time had a name. And it says this: it offers Finn a new mode of existence, a higher plane, an escape from the physical, from the mortal, from the limitations of being a person in a body in a world that will eventually end. The comet is not threatening Finn. It is not tempting him. It is offering him what most spiritual traditions would describe as the ultimate prize: liberation from the cycle of birth and death, freedom from suffering, the end of loss. And Finn says no. He says no the way a person says no to a second helping of food, casually, without drama, as if the offer were not the most important question that has ever been asked. He says something to the effect that he is just not ready for that he has stuff going on, that the material world, with all its pain and limitation, still has his attention, that he would rather be Finn with all that entails than be a ball of cosmic light, even though being a ball of cosmic light would mean never losing another arm, never having another relationship fall apart, never watching another friend die. This scene is played lightly, almost as a comedy beat, and the lightness is the point. Because the show is saying that the choice to be human, the choice to accept the terms of mortal existence, does not have to be a grand philosophical statement. It does not have to be accompanied by a speech or a dramatic pose or a moment of profound revelation. It can be casual. It can be offhand. It can be a kid shrugging and saying, "Nah, I have stuff to do." The casualness does not diminish the weight. The casualness reveals the weight. Because the deepest choices, the choices that define who you are at the most fundamental level, are not the ones you agonize over. They are the ones you make without thinking. The ones that are so deeply embedded in your orientation toward the world that they do not feel like choices at all. They feel like breathing. Finn does not choose to be human the way a philosopher chooses a position. He chooses to be human the way a plant turns toward the sun. It is not a decision. It is a direction. And every version of Finn makes this same non-decision in its own way. Shoko does not choose mortality. She is born into it, but she engages with it fully, reaching for connection and meaning even in a world that gives her neither. Farmworld Finn does not choose his vulnerability. He is formed by it, but he tries within the limits of his formation to be good. Pillow World Finn does not choose to live a temporary life. He falls into it, but he lives it fully, building a family and a community and a world that is real to him even though it disappears. Fern does not choose to be a copy. He is made one, but he fights desperately and tragically to be something, to be someone, to have an identity that is his own. Dead Finn does not choose to be dead. He just is, but he uses death as a reason to keep searching for Jake, turning the end of his life into the beginning of his last adventure. Every version makes the same non-decision. Yes, I will be here. Yes, I will participate. Yes, I will accept the terms, whatever the terms are, and make the best of them, whatever the best is. And the cumulative effect of all these non-decisions stacked on top of each other across every timeline and every dimension and every incarnation is a picture of a soul that is, at its deepest level, committed to existence. Not to any particular form of existence. Not to being a hero or a human or a boy with a hat and a sword. committed to the act of existing itself, committed to the being here-ness of being here. And that commitment, that direction, is the thing that every version shares and that no single version can contain. Let us talk about the way the show uses Finn to explore the concept of growth, because the versions of Finn are not just a catalog of alternative identities, they are a model of how growth works, and specifically how growth works when you accept that the person you are growing into is not going to look like the person you started as. Growth, as the show presents it through Finn, is not a process of refinement. It is not the chipping away of imperfections to reveal the perfect form underneath. It is a process of multiplication. You do not become better, you become more. You add versions of yourself. Each experience, each relationship, each crisis, each loss creates a new version of you, and the new version does not replace the old one. It sits beside it. The brave 12-year-old who fights monsters is still inside 17-year-old Finn. The heartbroken 15-year-old who destroyed his relationship with Flame Princess is still there too. The 13-year-old who traveled to Pillow World and lived a life and forgot it, he is there. The boy who reached for his father and lost his arm, he is there. They are all there all the time, layered on top of each other. And the person the world sees, the Finn who walks into the finale with a calm assurance that the younger versions did not have, that person is not a single identity. He is a stack of identities, a tower of versions, each one adding its weight, its experience, its specific knowledge of what it feels like to be alive in a specific moment under specific circumstances. This is how you grow too, not by leaving your old selves behind, not by killing the versions of yourself that embarrass you or shame you or remind you of things you wish you had done differently. Those versions are still with you. The child who is afraid of the dark is still with you. The teenager who made terrible choices is still with you. The young adult who loved the wrong person or said the wrong thing or stayed in the wrong place too long, that person is still with you. And the person you are now, the person listening to this in the dark, is not a replacement for those older versions. You are an addition. You are the latest layer, the newest version, the most recent expression of a direction that has been running through every version of yourself since before you can remember. The show does not tell you to forgive your old selves. The show does not tell you to learn from them or be grateful for them or any of the other things that self-help culture tells you to do with the versions of yourself that you would rather not think about. The show simply says, they are there. They are part of you. They are as real as the version you are now. And the composite, the full stack, the tower of every self you have ever been, that is who you are. Not the best version, not the worst version. All of them together, adding up to something that is more than any individual version could be on its own. Finn's growth across the series is the most visible expression of this principle, but the versions across dimensions make the same argument in a different register. Farm World Finn did not grow up the way Main Timeline Finn did, and the result is not a worse person or a better person, but a different person. A person whose stack of selves contains different layers. The farm boy, the crown bearer, the corrupted Finn. Pillow World Finn grew up an entirely different way, in an entirely different context, and his stack includes a husband, a father, a grandfather, an old man dying in bed. Fern's stack is the shortest and the most painful. A few months of existence, a borrowed set of memories, a descent into villainy, a death, a transformation. But it is still a stack. It is still a collection of selves. And each collection tells a different story about the same soul, the same direction, the same reaching. What this means for you, practically, right now, tonight, is that the version of yourself that is lying in the dark listening to this is not the definitive version. It is not the final draft. It is not the version that gets graded, that gets judged, that gets to represent you for all time. It is one layer in an ongoing stack. It is one version in an ongoing series. And the next version, the one that will exist tomorrow morning when you wake up, will be different, slightly, in ways you cannot predict. Because between now and then, something will happen. Something small, probably. Something that does not feel like it matters. But it will add a layer. It will create a new version. And the new version will sit on top of the old one. And the stack will grow by one. And you will be, tomorrow, a slightly different composite than you are tonight. This is not a metaphor. This is a description of how identity works. And Adventure Time, through its treatment of Finn's versions, gets closer to an accurate description than most philosophical texts manage. You are not one thing. You are not becoming one thing. You are accumulating constantly versions of yourself. And the accumulation is the identity. And the identity is never finished. And the never finishing is not a problem to be solved. It is the condition. It is what being alive means. Being alive means being unfinished. Being alive means being a work in progress that will never reach completion. Being alive means stacking versions of yourself on top of each other until the stack reaches a height that you could not have predicted when you placed the first layer, and then looking at the stack and realizing that the stack is not you. The stack is the thing you left behind. You are somewhere else. You are the next layer. You are the version that has not been created yet. The version that will come into existence the next time you make a choice, the next time you reach for something, the next time you say yes or no to the world's latest offer. There is one final lens through which the versions of Finn deserve to be examined, and it is the lens the show itself uses most consistently, although it never names it. The lens of love. Every version of Finn loves. This is the constant that runs deeper than heroism, deeper than engagement, deeper than the direction itself. Every version of Finn, without exception, across every timeline and every dimension, and every incarnation, loves someone. The comet loves the world it crashes into. Shoko loves Bubblegum, even as she betrays her. Main timeline Finn loves Jake, and Bubblegum, and Flame Princess, and the entire world of Ooh. Farm World Finn loves his family. Pillow World Finn loves Rosalind and his children. The Finn sword loves the boy who carries it, even though the boy does not fully understand what it means to carry a living consciousness. Fern loves Finn, with a love so twisted by grief and impossibility that it looks like hatred but is not. Fiona loves Cake, and her world, and the life she was living before it was threatened. Dead Finn loves Jake enough to search across 50 dead worlds. Reincarnated Finn loves whoever is next to him, whoever the new world gives him, whoever the next version of the story provides. Love is the one thing that does not change when everything else changes. The body changes, the world changes, the memory changes, the identity changes. But the love remains. It changes form. It changes object. It changes expression. But the fundamental capacity for it, the willingness to open yourself to another being knowing that the opening makes you vulnerable and that vulnerability is the price of connection, that does not change. That is the thing the soul carries. Not memories, not strength, not heroism. Love. The ability and the willingness to love. The show never says this. The show would never say this because saying it would diminish it. Saying it would turn it into a slogan, and slogans are the enemy of truth because slogans take complex, multi-dimensional realities and flatten them into sentences that can be printed on t-shirts. Adventure Time does not print things on t-shirts. Adventure Time shows you a boy losing his arm because he reached for his father. Adventure Time shows you a grass clone dissolving in the arms of the person he wanted to be. Adventure Time shows you a sentient sword swung at monsters by a boy who does not fully grasp but the sword can feel. Adventure Time shows you an old man dying in a pillow world with pillow children he will never remember. Adventure Time shows you all of this and lets you feel the love that runs through all of it, and does not name it, and does not explain it, and trusts you to carry it away from the screen and into your own life and to recognize it when you encounter it there. And you will encounter it. You encounter it every day. The love that runs through the versions of Finn is not fictional love. It is not a different kind of love than the love you feel for the people in your life. It is the same love. It is the same reaching. It is the same willingness to be broken by the thing you cannot stop wanting. The same refusal to pull back. The same choice to extend yourself past the point of safety because the alternative where you keep all your pieces but never touch anyone, is a life not worth living, even if it is a life without pain. The versions of Finn are all variations on this theme. The comet crashes because crashing is how it touches the world. Shoko steals because stealing brings her close to Bubblegum. Finn fights because fighting is how he protects the people he loves. Farm World Finn puts on the crown because the crown is the only power available to him, and he needs power to protect his family. Pillow World Finn builds a life because building a life is how he loves the person next to him. Fern rages because rage is the only channel left for the love that has nowhere to go. Dead Finn searches because searching is what love does when it is separated from its object. The expression changes, the love does not. And the arm that every version loses. The arm is what love costs. Not metaphorically, literally. The arm is the piece of yourself that you extend toward another person. The piece that reaches, the piece that bridges the gap between yourself and someone else's self. And when the other person does not reach back, or when the connection breaks, or when the world intervenes and the distance becomes too great, the arm comes off, the bridge collapses, and you are left with a space where the reaching used to be. But here is the thing the show never stops demonstrating. The arm grows back. Not the same arm, not the original arm. A different arm, made of different materials, shaped by different circumstances. Functional in different ways. The grass arm, the mechanical arm, the prosthetic, The reaching does not stop because the arm breaks. The reaching adapts. It finds new forms, it uses new tools, it extends itself through whatever is available. And the reaching, the direction of the reaching, the love that drives the reaching, does not care what the arm is made of. It does not care whether the arm is flesh or grass or metal or spirit. It cares only that the reaching continues. And it does. It always does. In every version, in every world, in every life. You are reaching right now. You may not know it. You may think that you are just lying in the dark, listening to someone talk about a cartoon, drifting towards sleep. But you are reaching. By listening, you are reaching toward the show and the characters and the ideas that the show carries. By being here, you are reaching toward a version of yourself that understands something you did not understand before, or that feels something you had not felt before, or that recognizes something you had not recognized before. The reaching is happening. It is always happening. It is the thing you cannot stop doing, even in the dark, even in sleep, even in the moments when you think you are doing nothing at all. You are reaching toward something. You are extending yourself toward the next version of yourself, the one that exists just on the other side of tonight, the one that will wake up tomorrow with the accumulated weight of everything you have ever been, including the version that is here right now, in the dark, listening, reaching. Let us talk about endings for a moment, because the versions of Finn have something to say about endings that is worth hearing before this video closes. Every version of Finn ends. The comet crashes and becomes something else. Shoko dies in toxic waste. Main timeline Finn grows old and dies of natural causes. Farm World Finn is consumed by the crown. Pillow World Finn dies in bed and is forgotten. The Finn sword is merged with the grass sword and ceases to exist as an independent being. Fern dies in Finn's arms and becomes a tree. Fiona faces the possible annihilation of her entire world. Dead Finn chooses reincarnation, which is a kind of ending, the ending of the specific self in favor of the continuation of the general direction. Every version ends, and every ending leads to a beginning. The comet crashes and becomes a butterfly. Shoko dies and becomes a ghost, and the ghost's resolution leads to Finn's healing. Main timeline Finn dies and becomes Dead Finn, and Dead Finn becomes Reincarnated Finn. Farm World Finn's destruction creates the conditions for the restoration of his timeline. Pillow World Finn's death leads to his return to the main timeline, where he is able to continue his life. The Finn Sword's merger with the Grass Sword creates Fern, a new being with a new story. Fern's death creates the tree that creates the setting for the next hero. Fiona's crisis leads to the restoration of her world and the expansion of the multiverse. The endings are not endings, they are transformations. And this is the show's final, most important statement about what it means to be Finn, what it means to carry this particular soul through this particular universe. You do not end, you transform. The specific form you are wearing right now, the body and the name and the identity and the story, that will end. That ending is real. It is not metaphorical. It is not softened by the knowledge that something comes after it. The death of a specific self is a real death, and the grief that accompanies it is real grief. And the show does not pretend otherwise. Fern's death is devastating. Finn's death is devastating. Shoko's death is devastating. The show does not use the promise of transformation to diminish the reality of loss. But the show also says, the loss is not the last word. The transformation follows, not as a consolation, not as a reward, not as a purpose. As a fact, the soul that was a comet becomes a butterfly. The soul that was a thief becomes a hero. The soul that was a hero becomes a ghost, becomes a choice, becomes a new body in a new world with a new story. And the new story is not a continuation of the old story. It is a new story, with new characters and new context and new challenges and new specific, unrepeatable, beautiful details. And the soul that enters this new story is not the same soul that left the old one. Not exactly, but it carries the same direction, the same reaching, the same love, the same stubborn insistence on being here and being present and being engaged with whatever the world offers. Even when what the world offers is pain, even when what the world offers is loss, even when what the world offers is another arm to break. There is a way in which every version of Finn is also a version of the audience, and the show knows this, and it builds this knowledge into the structure of every episode that introduces a new Finn. When you meet Farm World Finn, you are meeting the version of yourself that would have existed if your circumstances had been different. When you meet Pillow World Finn, you are meeting the version of yourself that lives inside the relationship you are in right now, the version that is real even though it is temporary. When you meet Fern, you are meeting the version of yourself that compares itself to the person it thinks it should be and finds itself lacking. When you meet Dead Finn, you are meeting the version of yourself that will exist after everything else is gone. The show does not make these connections explicit. It never turns to you and says, "This is you." It does not need to. The connections are felt. They are transmitted through the quality of the animation, the tone of the voice acting, the way the music shifts when a version of Finn appears on screen. The show trusts you to do the work of recognition. It trusts that when you see Fern struggling with the impossible question of who he is, you will recognize that struggle as your own. It trusts that when you see Pillow World Finn dying in bed, having lived a full life that will be completely forgotten, you will feel the weight of your own mortality in the same frame. It trusts you, and the trusting is itself a kind of love. The love of an artist for an audience. The love that says, I know you are capable of understanding this. I know you are smart enough and brave enough and present enough to feel what I am trying to show you. I do not need to explain it. I just need to show it. And you will feel it. Every version of Finn is an invitation to self-recognition, and every invitation that is accepted, every moment where you see yourself in the Green Knight's rage, or the Pillow World's tenderness, or the Comet's ancient patience, adds a layer to your own stack. You are not just watching the versions of Finn. You are adding them to yourself. You are incorporating them into your own collection of selves. Your own composite identity, your own tower of versions. The version of you that existed before you watched this video is different from the version that exists now, because now you carry a version of Fern's grief and a version of Shoko's longing and a version of Dead Finn's devotion and a version of the Comet's patience, and those additions are small and they are quiet, but they are real. And they will sit inside you alongside everything else you have ever absorbed from every story you have ever encountered. And together, all of it, the experiences and the fictions and the dreams and the memories and the things you made up and the things that happened together, all of it, that is you. Stories are not decoration. Stories are not entertainment. Stories are the mechanism by which identity is constructed. Every story you hear adds a version to your stack. Every character you care about becomes a part of you. Every fictional person you have ever loved. Every animated boy with a white hat and a sword and a direction he cannot name. Every green clone who died in the arms of his original. Every girl in a parallel dimension who fought to prove her reality was real. Every old man who searched across 50 dead worlds for his best friend. They are all inside you now. They are all versions of you now. And the composite they form, the tower they build when you stack them on top of all the other versions you have accumulated from all the other stories and experiences of your life, that tower is who you are. Not who you think you are, not who you tell people you are, who you actually are. In the quiet, in the dark, when no one is looking and no performance is required. That person, that actual, specific, unrepeatable person, is a composite of every version of yourself and every version of every fictional self you have ever cared about. And Adventure Time knows this, and it built Finn to be one of the versions worth carrying. There is a moment near the end of the series where Finn is sitting on a hill and looking at the landscape of Oo. He is not fighting anything. He is not on a quest. He is just sitting in the way that a person who has been through a great deal learns to sit, with the full weight of everything he has been pressing down on him and the full mystery of everything he will be pulling him forward. He is, in that moment, all of his versions at once. He is the comet that crashed and the butterfly that flew and the thief who died and the boy who lost his arm and the man who lived in a pillow world, and the soul that navigated the afterlife and the direction that has been running through existence since, before time had a name. He is all of them. He is sitting on a hill and he is all of them, and he does not know it, because you never know it, because the thing about being a composite is that from the inside, a composite looks like one thing. It looks like a person sitting on a hill. It looks like a boy with a hat and a sword. It looks simple. It is not simple. It has never been simple. There is a 12-year-old inside that boy who was certain about everything and who would be startled to learn that certainty is not the same as wisdom. There is a 15-year-old who loved the wrong person and a 16-year-old who lost an arm, and a version from a pillow world who built a family and forgot it, and a version from a parallel timeline who was consumed by a crown, and a version who was trapped in a sword, and a version who was made of grass and could not figure out who he was. There are past lives stacked beneath all of this, going back to the beginning of the world, going back to a comet that chose to crash rather than float past. There are future lives stacked above all of this, lives that have not been lived yet, versions that have not been created, selves that are waiting for the next choice to bring them into existence. And all of it, every version, every layer, every self, past and present and future and parallel and imaginary, all of it points in the same direction, toward the world, toward other people, toward the next adventure. Toward the next arm that will break and the next arm that will grow in its place, and the next reaching that the new arm will attempt. Toward the never-ending, never completed, never fully understood act of being alive in a world that did not ask for your presence, but that is, against all odds, better for it. Remember the boy from the beginning, 12 years old, certain about everything. White hat, golden sword, a dog that can stretch into any shape, a world that seems to exist for the sole purpose of giving him something to do. That boy is still in there, somewhere inside the 17-year-old who sits on the hill, somewhere inside the old man who dies and enters the afterlife, somewhere inside the comet that was here before any of them. The 12-year-old who is certain about everything is still in there, and he is wrong about almost everything, and his wrongness does not diminish him. His wrongness is the starting point. His wrongness is the first layer, the foundation on which every other version is built. And the foundation is made of certainty, which is the wrong material for a foundation, but the only material available to a 12-year-old. And the fact that it cracks under the weight of everything that is built on top of it does not mean it was not necessary. It was necessary. Every version of Finn needed that first version, that wrong, certain, whole-armed, simple version to build on. And every version of you needed your first version too, the one who was wrong about everything and did not know it, and whose wrongness was the kindling for every correction and every growth and every new layer that followed. You were never wrong about who you were. You were just early. You were the first version, and every version since then has been an addition, not a correction, an expansion, not a fix. You have been growing not toward a destination but outward, in all directions, adding selves the way a tree adds rings, each one marking a year, each one recording the weather, each one contributing to the structure that holds the next one up. And the tree, the full tree, the one with all the rings, that is who you are. Not the heartwood, not the bark, not any single ring. All of them together, the whole tree. Finn is a tree, literally, in the end. Fern becomes a tree that holds the Finn sword in its branches. But Finn is a tree in the other sense too, the metaphorical sense. The sense that matters to you right now in the dark. Finn is a tree made of versions, and the tree is still growing, and the versions are still being added, and the story is still being told. In new voices, in new dimensions, in new bodies that do not remember the old ones. And the tree reaches for the sky the way it has always reached, with whatever arm is available, in whatever world it finds itself, toward whatever light is visible from wherever it happens to be standing. That is Finn. That is every version of Finn. That is the thing the show built across a decade and a dozen iterations and 100 episodes and a million small, specific, irreplaceable moments of animation and voice and music and silence. A tree, a direction, a reaching. A boy on a hill who does not know that he contains multitudes, who does not need to know, who just needs to keep sitting there, looking at the world, waiting for the next adventure, which is already on its way. If you enjoyed this, subscribing to Pine Hat truly helps us continue making these videos. It costs nothing and means more than you know. Thank you for staying. Sleep well. The next version of you is already on its way too.